Alright, so after last video, where I did a code review, like code structuring, right? I thought I'd do like look at my own stuff, right? Look at my own code and like check it out, do a little code review type stuff, right? So here's the game crash. Let's see which is so it's a basic game, right? You can jump. You have a little dash here, right? There we go. And you want to avoid hitting the spikes and you want to avoid hitting the enemies. Um, And so sort of with these simple controls, you can do that. Oh, and you hit the spike there, right? All right. And this is actually based on a different game, so his version is like way cooler, but I don't know. I don't know why I did mine actually, maybe for practice or something. Um, yeah, they're both pretty cool. You should check them out. I'll put links in the description for both of them. Well, try not. Hey, that's not very nice, man. Okay. Yeah, let's open up the framework. All right, so I'm just gonna peruse the code here, see what I can find that like stands out. So this guy's in the Chili framework, right? So the game.h game.cpp is like your main deal here. So this project, I think I did like maybe 1 or even 2 years ago, and you can just kind of tell looking through here. One thing I want to note is that the game.h file is always pretty messy, right? There's always a bunch of just random everything in here. I haven't really found a good way to get rid of that until now, right? I really still struggle with this. But ideally, you segregate everything you can into a different file. Yeah, so like move speed. I'm guessing that's the move speed of the actual track, like the rate the screen moves, right? In my mind, you put that in a separate file, right? So you have like screen scroller.h, right? And you have move speed in there, and he handles moving the actual screen. Now, another thing you notice, right here we have all these buttons, and these are for the menu. So let's run it here. This is in release mode. It actually looks like the final game now. So you have a button class, which is just regular old button. You give it like a position and a name. Um, it does some stuff for you. And these are all in the game.h. So they're the main game header file. And so you see start. So that's this button here, quit, level editor. And we have a couple other buttons here. And this is all handled in the game, right? So, in my mind, this isn't ideal. In my mind, you say, you have a different file to handle the menu separately so this would be the menu separately from the actual game, separately from the level editor actually. Yeah, here's another thing here. When I'm making the level editor object, I'm passing it in. I think this is the font. Yeah, the font. I instantiate it in game. Yeah, I'm actually passing in the font to each button and to the level editor and everything. So you see, yeah, it takes the actual font in here, and I'm sure it sets it in the yeah, it sets the font there. Man, what a mess. Yeah, it sets him and it takes it from game. This is fine. At the time I was like, yeah, this is the way to do it. Now, you have this thing like a codex, right? So you say codex.load font, and then give it this string, and it'll load that font from the file rather than having to, have it actually owned in game. All the resources, so like your fonts, and this will come in later for sure with the sprites, I'm sure. And you just say load sprite, so it's like, okay, if the codex doesn't have it, load it into memory. If it does have it, just return the actual one it has loaded. That's the way I do things now, at least in the Chili framework. Works infinitely better than this old system passing stuff around all over. Because if I had any actual real objects, like these buttons, having to pass in a font every single time, when you don't have to, especially, it is kind of not ideal. I want to be passing in unique things, so like position, name, colors, color when you highlight, right? Those are more important to me than a font. You could load that in anywhere, yeah. So another one basically is so I have a vector of surfaces. Surface is like an image. I have it in an array, and then I index into this to get the for the block, the textures of the buttons. This is for the level editor. So not super important, arguably, but this is like these right here, right? So, oh, blank, that doesn't matter. But like block is this one. spike is this one, I think the reason I do this is because if we look in yeah, like where is it? Like enemy, you see? It's hard to see with the magenta, but he has two actual frames. Let's see if we can find like a better one. Everything's in red, it's hard to see. It's like the grass, for example, has two like frames. These are frames here, one, frame two. Same with the player, right? Frame one, frame two there. So I'm guessing that's my reason for doing this here is I have to load in the image and then I gather the proper sub image of that and then I have to expand it because it's pixel art and I'm drawing on a bigger screen, which is another issue, but I'm not sure. I don't know. That's more fine. Yeah, and passing in the font here again, you could do that with a codex. And it looks like I have a codex in here, and I say how to use it. I just don't end up using it anywhere. Yeah, here's another thing where I say load sprites. I'm calling this static method of these objects where I say load sprites, and I'm sure this is a static. Yeah, it's a static guy here, and it loads in the sprites for the whole for this class, I guess. Yeah, yeah, weird stuff here. Again, the codex is the way to go because then each object can say, fetch a pointer. You own your own pointer to the object, and you don't have to handle the memory. That's the cool part, right? The codex deals with all the memory management BS, right? So you don't need to deal with any sort of weird pointer BS. Just like it's a pointer, but you don't need to use new or delete, right? You say, and it looks sort of like that probably is more like what you want here. And this would be in each object. So like this would be in here. You'd say like that. And then each guy would have his own pointer to the actual resource. But they don't deal with like deleting it or anything. And same thing with here, right? You don't want to be doing this in the start. Like, this looks like C, not C++. Yeah. Here's a little funny thing going on. So in the last video, right, I was all like, oh, ifs versus switches, it really is not that big of a difference. Right here where I say if state equals this state, if state equals that state, even though it's only two times, I don't know why it's an else if. Are there more states here? Oh, and then I return. Yeah, okay, this is bad. In this case, I think it's okay. Okay, no, past me. This is absolutely, yeah, this is absolutely not okay. Yeah, when you're handling states like a enum, right? That's like perfect for switch statements. Instead of using if, else if, again, it's not that big of a difference, but like idiomatically, like making your code look good wise, you want switch. So you do case game state menu, and then that's this whole thing, break, and then this one would be case game state level editor, yeah, and then break. Yeah, you can get rid of the squiggly dudes here, the curly braces. That's sometimes you do want that. If you have like variables, you need these here. Yeah, this is much better in my estimate. Rather than an if else if, yeah, this is where a switch statement makes much more sense. It just looks better to me. Now the returns, this is not good. I know past me was like not a huge fan, but I'm doing it anyway. He's all, you don't want to use return for flow control. That's a bad practice because it's, when I look at my code now, I'm like, well, why isn't this running? Oh, it's the returns. Like it just doesn't. It's not consistent with what you expect from code. So we're gonna get rid of these guys, right? This is not good. Yeah, don't just put returns everywhere in your code, especially if it's the update function of your whole game. That's not good. Not good. I should have not been lazy, really. So ideally, gameplay or playing the game or whatever. Okay, and then all this other stuff here. Oh wow, that is a lot. Putting all your stuff in update like this is also not good. Ideally, you can abstract everything into functions as much as possible. Okay, and now when we run it, it should just work exactly the same. Yeah, really, that's the way I would be doing it now. Yeah, the old way with the returns, that's not ideal. Okay, so here's an example of something you could put into an object function rather than having in the update of the whole game. We're looping through all the spike objects, right? So the spikes that fall from the ceiling. Yeah, so we check its rectangle, compare it with the players, and see if they're overlapping. And if the player isn't if you're dashing, you're immune to the spikes. And if that's the case, restart. And then we have this weird return here again, which I don't think is that big of a deal. It's really small. If you include it or not, it's not that much of a difference. So again, if I did this now, I probably would not include this. Anyway, what you could do here is in the spike object, right? You do, I guess it's called it. Also, naming, you should call this like spike, not it. I know it's it for iterator, but it still makes it unclear for the rest of this. You're like, it is that the iterator to the block to the spike. If this was longer, which it already is like a screen tall, right? That's quite a bit of stuff there. Yeah, I would spike it or spike iterator for short, uh, if you prefer that. But yeah, this whole thing, you could say, spike in spike.update maybe, and you're already giving it the player position. Why not just give it the whole player? And then inside there, it uses the get position and the get rect, right? And then maybe it'll return true if it is overlapping, or maybe it'll set some bool within itself, which you check later. So it already has, it is destroyed type method. So you could easily have, is overlapping with player, has destroyed player, and check that later and do this functionality. Yeah. Basically, just doing this in update is kind of gross, and especially if this had more conditions to it, it could get pretty messy. So it's not the end of the world, but it's kind of ugly, and you don't want it like this, right? And same thing here, right? Let's see what this guy does. If you're dashing, the dash will destroy the spike, any spikes within the dash area. This could clearly be a function, inside update, right? You could pass it in player. Yeah. This could easily be put into spike.update. And spike.move here, that should be an update too. Essentially, you never don't call, you never call one and not the other. Just put them in the same function. I would even comment this out and in update call, just move, self.move, right? Same thing here again. You could just pass in the player, and then within update if player.jumping, call this method of yourself within the spike object, just to clean up the game.cpp. None of this needs to be in here. There's no reason for like most of this to be in here, except for the update. Okay, last one with the spikes, but this is for all of them. In here, I check each individual spike, like, should I destroy it? Okay, destroy it, do the stuff. Ideally, you just have a method for this, so you get this guy out of here, and later on you say, clean up array, and then you pass it in the spikes, you pass in your condition, this method, and then you destroy them that way. And I do that later on. Yeah, remove erase if, I think, is right, where you pass in the container, so that would be the spike vector, the spike array, and then the predicate, so you could do a lambda function or just pass in this thing. That's better in my mind, because it just has such potential for like messing stuff up, and sometimes things get updated once or twice or not, are skipped, and in this case that makes them offset. Basically, it's hard for me mentally to get this right. The other method is just much simpler, and you could put that at the end of update. Let's see. Yeah, like right here you'd have everything. So like, destroy all spikes, spike dot should destroy, destroy all enemies, enemies dot should destroy. Yeah. Here's another thing. This could just be an update. There's no reason it should be its own function. Well, it can be its own function, but you should just pass in this argument to update, and then say, enemy.update, and then update can call this function and this function with these arguments. There's no reason that they should be separated, because you never ever are calling them at different times. I don't even, it doesn't even make sense that would be the case. Yeah, these should be an update for sure. And same thing as before, right? These guys can obviously be put in update. This one can be, have its own function at the end that can be called. This is hard to read here. You don't want to just break it up when you get to the end. In my mind, you want to break stuff up so that you can read it. So you say, okay, add platforms, get like this all makes sense. Okay, random.range, that makes sense. Vector2, yeah, that makes sense. Function, right? This all makes sense. And then all your extra arguments there. Here's the same thing as before, right? This can go in update. Also, this is a memory leak, right? That you're never destroying these. So here's the same thing. I should have a class for handling the text. This is the tutorial text, right? This should all be handled in a class. This shouldn't be in game. Even if it is some simple thing like this, if you want more spiffy functionality, totally makes sense. It should just have its own class, so you don't have to look at it even. The naming here of restart, hard restart, and soft restart, I don't like that. Especially when I don't have comments saying what each of them do. I would much rather go with like pause, end level or something, or go back to menu. not soft restart and hard restart, and calling each other within the actual functions here. That's not right. There's the same thing as above. We can replace these with a switch, checking each state and not having the return there. That's obviously very wrong. And here again, yeah, I mentioned earlier about the having a text mover class to handle all this. This is why you don't. This shouldn't ever be in game.cpp.draw or whatever. You don't want to see this. Just put it, instead of all these lines, just put it in one. Text mover, tutorial text mover dot draw. Okay, so for the button here, I pass in a bunch of stuff. Okay, position on screen makes sense. Size of the button. So for the size, right? I in theory, like it's great to pass in a size. In reality, you probably just want it to overlap be underneath the text. You want the rectangle of the background to be around the text. And how you could do that is just say, how many characters are in the string and make the rectangle that wide, plus a little buffer or something. And then you don't have to pass this in, and then your buttons are always like pretty good. And if you want, you could have this as an optional argument at the end there. String, you can pass as a const reference. Colors C1 and C2. What does that mean? C1, C2, that means nothing to me. Is that the text color and the background color? Is it the highlight color and the unhighlighted color? This is unclear. You should name better than C1 and C2. That's not good. This is in the level editor for width, height, and start position. These can be vec2s. So it would be like static context for vec2 size and static context for vec2 start. For the tiles, I have a vector of ints. That's not ideal. You want an enumerator. I'm kind of guessing here, but I'm guessing, 0 equals empty, 1 equals, 1 equals block, 2 equals spike. That's probably what these line up to. Yeah, I don't know why everything in here is static. Just make it not static and just, initialize it in game. This is the kind of thing that I want to do that for, yeah? Also, I don't know why everything is a capital letter. It should be lower. Maybe because I made it static, which was a mistake in the first place. But even still, I should stick with the same naming scheme of lowercase for these kind of things. I don't know why I'm making an object here, or a char. Just put here and here. Why use why use dot data here? I think what this does is ignore the bounds check, and since I'm doing it here, that's fine to do that, but just I don't see any reason to just say data at index. That's not necessary. Same thing here. I don't think these should all be static. I think you should just make an object and then call these. Things that make sense for being static in my mind are like a codex, where you can call from any function without having to worry about where the object is located. You could say codex : load, codex : retrieve, whatever. For a map loader, which should probably be in map to begin with, by the way. The thing that loads the map data should probably be in the same place as the actual map itself. I don't know why I'm rounding the x and y position when I'm drawing it. Just round down. So, you don't need this to, int position dot x. Don't worry about rounding up. You're not going to notice. I don't even think that's correct anyway. I don't like that. Just don't do that. Also, the hashtag if0 preprocessor macros are fine if you do like if. So that would be if you are in debug mode, then do this. But if0, like that's just kind of pretentious. Like just do a comment in that case. No reason to have preprocessor stuff here. If it is like if false or if 0. For the float dash timer here, I'm guessing it goes, if dash timer is greater than dash cooldown, dash timer equals 0. You can make a class for that. Just make a timer class. It can be really simple, but it just helps readability so much. It's definitely the way to go. Not with a cooldown and a float. You just want a timer class. That's much better. Yeah, so if you check here, it calls player.update2. And also the check hits thing with the platforms, that should also just be an update in my opinion. So the first update, I guess I just trashed and I don't even call it anywhere. I mean, if we check, I don't think it's even anywhere in the code. Yeah, like it's never even called. So we only ever call update 2, which is where the actual code is. This is clearly not good. Like if I abandoned the first update and then did a new one and ended up sticking without, you should delete the first update and replace it with this. You should not have update and update two. That makes no sense. It's very confusing. That is wrong, wrong. Don't do that. Or if you do, don't name it update and update two. Make it update normal or update player. Anything but just update two. It's not right. Just ain't right. Here's another thing where I'm using a static object where it doesn't have to be. This can just be a regular object, not a static class or whatever. Yeah, where I'm calling the static version of just make an object and store it in the header file. Like it's this is weird. Don't do this. Don't make it static. Here's this thing where I do if condition return true, else return false. This is a clear case of, you could just return this actual condition, right? Because if the condition is true, return true. If the condition is false, return false. Just return the actual condition itself. This whole thing could be a return statement, semicolon there and everything. And that's just, you save yourself that much space, right? No reason to have all this. And I do this a couple times for all this type of function. Just return the condition itself, right? There's no reason not to. The chance for a spike to fall when the player jumps is probably something I would want in the header file. That seems like the kind of thing I would want to tweak and not have to search through a whole code CPP file to find this one obscure line here with a magic number here. So you could say, chance, right? Spike fall chance in the header file equals, is greater than 7. That's a 30% chance. So it would be 30 if it's less, 0 to 100 is less than 30. Of course, you'd have a random.chance function giving it, 0 to 100 as a percent chance. That works too. But of course, you want this number in the header file so you can tweak it. Yeah, anyway, there was that. Hopefully this was a little informative. A lot of this stuff is just nowhere near anything I would write today. It's just a lot of things are just so wrong and not idiomatic, not the way you want them. Anyway, hope you enjoyed. See ya.